what's up you guys? It's Avery and welcome back to my channel. For those of you who have never been here before, what's up? Glad you're here. I'm so excited for today's video because, as you can tell, since you clicked on it, today's video is a bookshelf tour, and I've been wanting to do one of these since I started BookTube, but for a long time I was at an apartment while I was in school, and so I only had a small bookshelf there, which wasn't my full bookshelf, so I didn't really feel like making a tour for that. And then I also had two bookshelves here at home, but these bookshelves didn't hold all of my books, so I was like, ugh, I don't know what to do. So I just never made one. But because I've recently moved out of my apartment and I moved back home, I am here with all of my books that I own on these shelves. I love watching bookshelf tours, so I was so excited to be able to make one today. For a while, I thought about maybe making an organization video where I organize my books on camera, but I literally could not think of an interesting way to do that. Like, I just don't understand how that would be fun to watch, because it would just probably be me just like staring at my shelves, moving the books around. And in this video, I'm going to explain why they're arranged certain ways, so I feel like that also would really be the only purpose of the organization video, so I didn't do it. I just organized them on my own and am going to film a tour for you. I'm also trying not to think about the fact that I recently got a new job, which is exciting, but it means I'm going to be moving in, I don't know, the next few months. Nothing's nailed down yet, but I'm gonna be moving in the near future, and so all the work I put into these shelves will be undone because I don't know if I'll be able to take both shelves. Anyway, doesn't matter. Without further ado, let's get started. So I'm gonna start by letting you guys know that the shelves are from Target. I will try and link them in the description if I can find them. I like them as bookshelves. They're really pretty, obviously, the way they look, but because they don't have like solid sides right here, it's kind of a little more difficult to lean books up against it because books have to be near the back in order to lean up against the bar. So that is something to think about if you like these shelves, but obviously I make them work and I think they're really pretty, so I wouldn't let that dissuade you, but it is something to think about. So I'm gonna start on the top left shelf. The first thing that I have here is this bookend, which has an A, and then all the way here at the bottom, I have the Z, because I thought that it would be cute to have them go from A to Z for my entire bookshelf, and I believe those came from IKEA, so I will also try to link those if I can find them. So this shelf, as well as the shelf right next to it, are both my favorite YA fantasy series. So I kept most of my YA actually on the bottom shelves of my bookshelves because I don't read tons of YA anymore, but I thought that all of these books are super pretty, and so I thought it would be really nice to display them on top. So first off, I have my Cassandra Clare books. While I have read all of her books, these are the only ones that I own because I think the rest of them my mom owns because we both read these series and loved them. But the first series I have here is the entire Dark Artifices series, Lady Midnight, Lord of Shadows, and Queen of Air and Darkness. And then they are sitting on top of the Shadowhunters Codex, which is a fun little reference book for different Shadowhunter things. And then next up I have Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy, which I think I liked that. It's been a long time, I don't really remember it. As well as The Bane Chronicles, which I do remember liking that. Both of those are just short stories centered on a specific character. Then next up, facing out, I have Chain of Iron, which is the second book in the Last Hour series. My mom has Chain of Gold, I believe. So eventually I will need to get, you know, the entire set. I mean, the cover is just beautiful, so it deserves to be facing the world for everyone to see. Then next up we have another really, really big favorite of mine, which is the Strange the Dreamer duology by Laini Taylor. Absolutely love, love, love this duology. Like, it's in my top books of all time, probably. So good. And then the last book on the shelf I have is Six of Crows. I do not have the second book, but there's the first one right there. Moving over to the next shelf, I have The Cruel Prince and The Wicked King. I do eventually want to get The Queen of Nothing, but I just do not have it yet. So I just have those two right here holding it down. Next up I have The Lunar Chronicles, which I have not read in a really long time, but both my mom and I like really, really loved this series. And so I'm missing Cress, which is the third book. And then I also have Fairest, which is a little novella about Queen Lavanna, which I actually haven't read. So fake fan alert. Next up we have my Twilight books, and I unfortunately do not have Twilight or New Moon, but I have Eclipse and Breaking Dawn in hardbacks right here. I want to get the first two, obviously, but I am just waiting to see when I can get one at a Goodwill or for like super cheap, because I don't want to spend money on them. I got Eclipse at a Goodwill, and then I got Breaking Dawn for like $1 at a thrift store. But then here I also have Midnight Sun, which is Twilight from Edward's perspective. I actually got this for free on a street in Oxford when I was in England last summer. Someone was getting rid of a bunch of books and they were throwing out a copy of Midnight Sun. And so I snatched that thing up, put it in my suitcase, which probably added like at least 5 pounds. And then next up we have Life and Death, which is Twilight reimagined. It's basically Twilight, but instead all of the characters are flipped, their genders. So instead of Edward and Bella, it is Beau and Edith, which I got this when I was like young and I thought that it was super cool and stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. I started reading it and I was like, this is kind of dumb because it's literally the same story just with different genders, and I just didn't really understand the point of it. So I never finished it, but you know, I have it there, so. Next up I have Heartless by Marissa Meyer, which I loved, and the cover is so beautiful, so I also have this one facing out. And then next to it I have another copy of Heartless, but this is the regular edition, which is the black cover, and then this white edition right here was a special edition that I got. I have Caraval and Legendary by Stephanie Garber. I read Caraval a long time ago and have not read the rest of the series. And then lastly, I have An Ember in the Ashes, which I have not read yet either. So those are my YA fantasy shelves up top. I have more YA fantasy down below, but these are most of my favorites. Okay, I'm just jumping into the frame real quick, but next up we have my historical fiction shelf. So I love historical fiction, and I haven't even read as much as I should, but from what I have read, I love it. So with the shelf, I organized it in chronological order. So from the earliest time that the historical fiction takes place to the most recently. And it pretty much ends with World War II. So starting off, we have The Red Tent by Anita Diamant, and this is a book that is set in biblical times, and so it is the earliest book that is on my historical fiction shelf. Next up we have this beast of a book called Paris, which my mom got me, and it originally came from like a Toronto public library or something. Yeah, as you can see, I don't know how it ended up where I live, but it's huge. And it is also historical fiction, which is set in Paris, and it spans like many years. I think it's like the earliest is in like 1200s or maybe even earlier than that. So it does a history of the city through looking at these families, these fictional families, which is pretty cool. Next up we have Luncheon of the Boating Party by Susan Vreeland, which I'm very excited to read this. It is a historical fiction novel based on the painting by Renoir called Luncheon of the Boating Party, and it follows Renoir and his friends who he's painted in this photo. And I'm really interested in that because I have been really getting into art history recently. Avery's Battlefield book 1 and 2, and these are not in the right order. That's horrible. Let me rectify that. These are 2 books that my mom picked up for me. They follow a boy named Avery during the Civil War, and she obviously picked it up because his name is Avery. And so I haven't read these yet, but they're pretty short, so I, will hopefully do that sometime. Pachinko, which I really want to read because I want to read it and watch the TV show. So that one it's high up on my TBR. I want to get to it eventually, but it's also like really thick, which I'm afraid of big books, if you know me. Here we have Coal River, which my aunt gave me because her book club read it. She gave it to me like 2 years ago, and I still have not read it, so I need to either read it or give it back to her. And then we have High as the Heavens, which is set in World War I, as well as The Forgotten Seamstress. Both of these are set in World War I. Next up we have To Kill a Mockingbird and Go Set a Watchman by Harper Lee. So I wanted to put these on my classics shelf, but the way that I needed to fill up this shelf, I needed to put something here. And so this is set during the Great Depression era, and it is a classic, but it's also historical fiction, you know, because all classics are historical fiction if they're fiction. I don't love it here, but it's where it's going to be. I have a lot of guilt about keeping the second book because I got the box set, and then my English teacher in high school was like, you know, Harper Lee like did not want that to be published. And I was like, oh, no, I didn't know that. So I feel kind of bad about it, but I mean, it came in the box set, so I can't get rid of it. I'm sorry. Next up, we have The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes. This is set also during the Depression era, I believe. All of these books here are set during World War II because that is one of my favorite time periods to read about in historical fiction. So I gave it its own little moment on the shelf. On top of here, I have this cute little, it's actually a vase, and I don't have any flowers in it right now, but it's like a cute little girl. And so here I have The Tattooist of Auschwitz, which also I wasn't sure if I wanted to put in historical fiction because it is based off of a real man's life. So it's kind of like a memoir, but it is fictionalized too. And on the cover it says a novel, so because it said that, I felt okay putting it in historical fiction, even though I know it's based off of a true story. So I don't know, don't kill me. Next up we have The Zookeeper's Wife, which I haven't read yet, but I really want to because I want to read it and then watch the movie. The Orphan Sisters, Lilac Girls, The Book Thief, which obviously The Book Thief is chef's kiss. And then having its own moment here is one of my favorite books of all time. If you have been watching this channel, you know that. I never shut up about it. But it is The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. So the cover is also like really pretty, and I really like the cover. So I thought it could have its own moment facing out. And then I also have another copy of the book right next to it. This is a paperback, and it's the first version that I read, but it's actually kind of busted up. So this is the copy that I lend to people, and then this is a hardback copy that is, you know, for me. So that is it for my historical fiction shelf. So this next shelf probably takes the cake as my favorite shelf. It is my Jane Austen shelf. So not only does she deserve her own shelf, but I have so many books that are either by her or related to Jane Austen that it needs its own shelf. I really, really love this shelf, so I'm excited to show you. So starting off, I'm gonna skip this book, but I'll come back to it later. I have all of Jane Austen's actual work right here at the beginning through this section of the shelf. First, I have her teenage writings, which I have yet to read, but I am excited to read that to kind of see, you know, where her writing originated and how she grew. So I definitely want to read that one day, but I just haven't gotten to it yet. And then next up we have Lady Susan, The Watsons, and Sanditon. So I've only read Lady Susan out of all of these three, but I love, love, love Lady Susan. That is one of the funniest works of literature to exist, I think. So this section is probably my favorite section. Obviously, front and center, we have the complete novels of Jane Austen, which is a beautiful book that my mom got me for my birthday this year. So thanks, Mom. I love you so much. You're my favorite person ever. It's all 6 of her novels, and it is so pretty that it had to face out and be the center of the shelf. And then right here, we have a matching set of all 6 of her novels as well. I actually rescued these from a used bookstore last year, and it was the entire set besides Pride and Prejudice because someone had just bought Pride and Prejudice and not the whole set, and it made me so, so angry because why would you separate one from the set? Especially because this set is like rare, and it took me forever to finally get this hard copy of the same set. Covers of all of the books are so pretty and absolutely beautiful. I had to do some TLC to the spines and the jackets of these books because they were pretty dirty when I got them, so it took me a while to clean them up, but I love them and they're so beautiful. So I am very excited with this portion of the shelf. I think it's so, so, so nice. Okay, so the rest of the shelf, we're basically just getting into Jane Austen related books. So starting off with the Jane Austen Book Club by Karen Joy Fowler. Jane Austen Ruined My Life by Beth Patillo. So good, so funny, really liked this book. Oh, and then I'm gonna jump back to the front here because this is Mary B, and it is a novel about Mary Bennet, which I had to put at the front because it is like the tallest of all of the books on this shelf, and so it looked really bad if it was just like sitting in the middle of the other books over here. So I just put it on the left side, kind of acting as a bit of a bookend. So then next up we have Longbourn by Joe Baker, and it's about the servants, or one of the servants in the Bennet household. It's just another fun spin-off, as well as the Darcy connection. This is about Charlotte and then Charlotte's sister Eliza, and I'm not really sure exactly what happens in that. Here I have Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, which I'm sure you've heard of, but apparently there's also Sense and Sensibilities and Sea Monsters. That's the cover. Absolutely iconic. I cannot breathe. There's the cover of Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. It's amazing. Do I ever think that I will read these books? I don't know. Probably not. Maybe one day. I just think they're hilarious and I have to have them to go on my Jane Austen shelf. Another amazing one, which is gifted to me by one of my mom's friends, is Pugs and Prejudice. It's so funny. As an example, it says, "That wasn't the only cause for celebration at Longbourn, Netherfield Bark." Oh my gosh, it's just like ridiculous. And then next up we have another copy of Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice, and these are both the copies that I first read when I read the books for the first time, and so they hold a little bit of sentimental value for me, as well as this one is really tabbed up. So I just needed to fill in the rest of the shelf a little bit. So I just put two other female classics authors. So I have Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, and then I have Elizabeth Gaskell's North and South. And then this right here is really cool. It's a wooden box that looks like a book and goes on your bookshelf, and it opens up. And in here, I just keep some bookmarks and like tabs to tab my books. And then sitting right here on the shelf, I have this cute little, what is the word for this? Decor. And it says, "Write your own story." And I just think that I've always had this, it's super cute, and I thought that it would look good on my Austen shelf. This right here, she's really just the masterpiece and so beautiful. This is the Jane Austen shelf. Okay, next up we have my adult fiction shelf, and this is probably the most packed shelf. It looks a little insane, but it's fine. So starting on the left side, I kind of started with adult fantasy / magical realism, and then moving into like thrillers and mysteries, which comes down here as well. So starting with Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. Then we have my two Erin Morgenstern books, which is The Starless Sea and The Night Circus. And The Starless Sea is so good. I really enjoyed this book. It's probably one of my favorite books from last year. Next up, I have The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. Also really love this book. I talk about this book all the time. And then the only real like fantasy book I have is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. These other books were more like magical realism than they were like full-on fantasy, and this book is like straight fantasy. Next up, we're moving into kind of like thrillers / mysteries, and starting off we have The Cuckoo's Calling by Robert Galbraith, which I have not read yet. Then we have The Silent Patient, which I love, so good. I talk about that one a lot on my channel, and I recommend that one to people a lot. The Woman in the Library, which recently came out and seems really interesting. It's about a murder that happens in a library. Then I have Strangers on a Train by Patricia Highsmith. Then I have Invisible by James Patterson, which I contemplated getting rid of, but I want to kind of broaden my horizons, and I've never read a James Patterson book before, so I thought I would keep it and maybe get to it one day. Moving on, this stack is all romance books, and they are books that the main plot is romance, but they also have other things that happen in them, as well as these other books have romance in them, but it's not the main plot. But these are like the books that I thought were most romancy. So starting with Beautiful Ruins by Jess Walter, really great book that takes place in Italy. The Last Summer of You and Me by Anne Brashares, which she wrote the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants series, which I love, but I have not yet read this one. The Bridges of Madison County, really great book. Colleen Hoover's Verity, which I haven't read yet, but I got this at a little free library actually, which was so exciting. So I will hopefully get to it because I know a lot of people really like that one. And I think it's romance. For some reason I think it also might be a thriller, so I'm not sure. I'm not really sure what it's about. But Colleen Hoover is mainly romance, so I put it here. Where the Crawdads Sing, great book. The Book Charmer, also a really great book. The Longest Ride by Nicholas Sparks. It's the only Nicholas Sparks book that I have and that I've ever read, and it is so good. I mean, the movie is really good as well, but I really, really enjoyed the book, and I remember the ending of this book absolutely blowing my mind. Then we have The Horse Whisperer by Nicholas Evans. I think I really enjoyed it, plus I really like horses, so it was kind of, you know, giving horse vibes also. And then lastly, I have The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood, which I will potentially be getting rid of because I don't know if I need to keep this book. Now moving on, I have just general fiction, and this is all, except for Before the Coffee Gets Cold, this is all just like realistic fiction. Before the Coffee Gets Cold is just sitting up there because I kind of wanted it to be set apart because I love that book, and so I'm a big fan, so that's up there. A Man Called Uva, so good. Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore, really enjoyed this book. My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh, which I haven't read yet, but I've heard good things about. The Girl with a Louding Voice, The Art of Racing in the Rain. I Am the Messenger by Markus Zuzik, who is the author of The Book Thief. And I haven't read this one, but I loved The Book Thief, so I'm hoping that this one is good. Where'd You Go, Bernadette? Love this book. Supreme Courtship by Christopher Buckley. So funny. One of the funniest books I've ever read. The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. Sights Unseen, and Paris by the Book. And then those are all sitting on top of How to Buy a Love of Reading. So this is my just kind of general adult fiction. Next up we have my classics shelf, and this is another shelf that I really love, but I think a big part of it is because of this little setup right here with all of my Shakespeare plays. I just think that it looks super cute. All of these are the Barnes & Noble editions, and I think they're like so pretty and just look really nice stacked on top of each other. So I have read all of these except for The Merchant of Venice, as well as I haven't read Julius Caesar or The Tempest. Really liked The Taming of the Shrew and Hamlet a lot when I read them this year, and then Macbeth and Othello were just okay for me. And then sitting on top is one of my favorite things on my shelves, and it is this tiny little book of sonnets. It says Love Sonnets of Shakespeare, and it's so cute and it looks so good sitting up here. But it's just a tiny little book that has all of his love sonnets in here, and I love it. I got it from a Goodwill, and I literally screamed when I saw it because it was so cute. As well as this inscription from the past owners from 1994. It says, "When I saw this cover, knew this book was yours." And it's blacked out, but it says "To Betty from John," and I just think that's so cute that obviously this man got this little book for Betty. Hey Siri, play Betty by Taylor Swift. Next up we have The Divine Comedy by Dante. Have not read this, but I don't even remember where I got this edition. Maybe a Goodwill, but it's like super dope. As well as Les Miserables, which I think I got out of Barnes & Noble. It's like one of their really pretty editions of their classics that they do, and I think there was a sale going on, so I got it. Have not read Les Miserables. I'm actually scared out of my mind to eventually read that. Next up we have Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, an absolute banger. I don't know if this is the Barnes & Noble edition. I think it might be, but I love this edition. It's so pretty. Next up we have Letters to a Young Poet by Rilke. Love this. The Great Gatsby, a classic. Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse. The Pursuit of Love by Nancy Mitford. That was an okay book. I wasn't obsessed, but I thought it was interesting. 84 Charing Cross Road. I'm not sure if this is really a classic because it was published not that long ago, but I just added it to the shelf. Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. Tender as the Night. Scarlet Letter. Wuthering Heights. And then moving into these three, these are classics, but they're also children's books. So this is Heidi, which I love Heidi, and my mom read me Heidi when I was a kid, and I think that it's so good. It wasn't this copy, but I got this copy a little while ago because it's so pretty, and so big fan of Heidi. Pinocchio, I got this from a little free library, I think, because it's so pretty. As well as My Friend Flicka, another book that is super pretty. Has turquoise edges, and like I said, I'm a horse girl. But it needs some serious TLC because it is very old and the cover is starting to come off. So these next books are not classics. These are just random books that didn't really go into a specific category on my bookshelf, so I had extra space at the end of the shelf, so I just put them here. I have I'd Rather Be Reading by Anne Bogle, which is just a good story of essays about what being a reader is like, and it's really cute for anyone who loves to read. This is a play called The Red Velvet Cake War, which I starred in high school. I played Peaches, and that was really fun, and it's a really funny play, so I have that here. The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. I've been wanting to watch this documentary, and then I found this book recently in a little free library, but I have literally no idea what genre that is, so here it is. Refusing Heaven, which is a poetry collection. It's my only book of poetry that I own, so it's here. And then A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. Such a good book, and this is a really cool illustrated version of it. And then I have my Kindle sitting in here because she needs a place to be when she's not being used. And then this end cap is this wooden horse figurine that I got in Jamaica a long time ago. So I thought this was a cool end cap to this entire shelf. So this is my classic shelf. I really like the way it looks, but it's pretty much just because of that Shakespeare stack on the left. Next up, this is my memoirs / nonfiction shelf. And let me tell you, I was surprised that I had this many memoirs and nonfiction books because I really thought that I had like 0, but I had enough to make a whole shelf for them. So there we are. I guess starting in the middle, this is a book called Avid Reader by Robert Gottlieb, and it's about this man who was a book editor for his entire life, and it's a memoir about his life. Obviously, she's facing out because avid reader, a very avid reader. My mom got this for me a little while ago because obviously it deserves to be displayed on my shelf because I'm a very avid reader, in case you were unaware. So on the left side of this section right here, these are all memoirs, and then the right side is all other nonfiction books. So we have Under the Tuscan Sun, Can You Ever Forgive Me, We Should Hang Out Sometime, which is a really funny story about this guy's dating life and how he like hit 25 years old and never had a girlfriend, and he explains why, and it was just really funny. Almost French, a memoir about this woman who moves to Paris, which #jealous. The Dressmaker of Carcana, Sometimes a Woman Needs a Horse. I told y'all I'm a horse girl, okay? Dreaming in Chinese, really good memoir about a woman who moves to China and starts learning Chinese, very good. Separated at Birth, a story about 2 twin sisters who were separated and then reunited. And I have a twin sister, so that's why my mom got me that. Very interesting. Excited to read. Lunch in Paris. And then lastly, we have Born to Run, which is about a hidden tribe who lived in Mexico and who had the ability to run for like hundreds of miles without rest or injury. And that just seems like really cool to read about. And it's about this man who's a runner and goes to learn about them. So it's like a memoir, but it's also nonfiction because it's about not just himself. Under this book, I have Crying in H Mart. This is one of my favorite memoirs of all time by Michelle Zauner. So good. You will cry. That is a given. Next up we have How to Read Literature Like a Professor. So I got this at a used bookstore for like 25 cents. For those of you who may be new to my channel, I was an English major, and so I am used to reading literature and analyzing it from that perspective. So I think it's going to be interesting to no longer be doing that now that I've graduated. So I thought that this book might be good to have if I ever feel like I want to get educational again about my reading. Next up we have MFA vs. NYC, The Two Cultures of American Fiction. And this book is a collection of essays about the difference between creative writing MFA programs and book publishing in New York. And I started reading it, but it starts with the MFA side, which I was not super interested in. And so I think I might pick it up again and start reading more about publishing in New York because that is what I'm most interested in. Both of these books by Temple Grandin are about animals. These are just about how animals relate to humans and how we are similar to them. And then this whole section right here is just journals. A lot of them are blank. I haven't gotten to yet. Not all of them. And then this is a textbook called Working with Words, which I had to use for one of my classes in college and has good information in it, so I want to keep it. So that is my nonfiction shelf. It's mainly memoirs versus like a nonfiction shelf, but you know, nonfiction is real life and memoirs are real life, so same thing, okay? So this is my YA shelf. Well, I guess this is technically my third YA shelf because there's the 2 on top, and then there is another YA shelf right below with just the final books that I wasn't able to squeeze onto this shelf. So starting off here on the left, I started with my contemporary YA books. So this entire series is the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants series by Anne Brashares. Love, 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 love these books so much. They were super important to me when I was a teenager, and I'm a big fan of this entire series. I think that she's a great Great author. Three Willows is kind of like a spin-off of these, which I haven't read this one yet, but I have it and want to keep it to go with the rest of the series. Everything Everything by Nicola Yoon. And then Between the Lines by Jodi Picoult and Off the Page, which is the second book to this one. Both of these were pretty good and about a character who comes to life off the page, which is cool for most of us book lovers. I think we all would want that to happen to us. Am I right? These three books are by Gail Forman. Just One Year is the second book. I don't have Just One Day because someone, I think my sister, love you, but I think she lost it. And then I have If I Stay and Where She Went, both good YA contemporaries. Now moving on to YA fantasy. I have the first three Shatter Me books, and back when I read these books, this was the last one, but now I think there's like a million more, which I haven't read, I probably won't read, but I really liked these three a lot. Linger, which is the second book in the series by Maggie Stiefvater. The first one is Shiver. I also really liked this series. It's about a werewolf, but I don't have any of the rest of them, but maybe one day I will get them. Seafire, haven't read this yet. Hush Hush, the first book in a series. I never read the rest of the series, but I really liked this. Wayfarer, which is the second book in the Passenger series. My mom has the first one. The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater, haven't read that yet. Salt and Storm, The Girl Who Drank the Moon, Blythewood. Next up we have the A Beautiful Dark trilogy, and they're in opposite order. This is the first one, second one, third one. This is a book about two fallen angels who fall in love with this girl, and it's really good. I loved this series when I was a teenager. Here I have this little plaque my mom got me that says my mom is my BFF, which is absolutely accurate. I've talked about her through the entire course of this video, so that's obvious. Here I have the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children series. Really liked this series when I was younger. My Name is Memory, and The Brilliant Death. So that is it for the first YA, I guess it's the third YA shelf. And then I have a little bit of overflow going down here onto this bottom shelf. And I have the Maze Runner series here on the left. Love that. This whole shelf is mainly like dystopian stuff. So we have the Maze Runner series, the Fifth Wave series. Those are just not in order, but that's fine. The last two Hunger Games, because I don't think I own the first one, so I need to get that one. Silo, which was a really good science fiction, I think science fiction-y, or maybe it's a little fantasy, I don't know. YA book. I really liked it, but I never read the rest of the series. The Unbecoming and the Evolution of Mara Dyer. I need to get the third one. Loved that series. Steelheart, which I guess is technically fantasy, so that's just chilling down here by itself. I lent the last two books to a friend, so the other two are not there. And then lastly, we have The Giver, which is a classic, so good. And then I have my Z bookend right here to finish off the shelves. I have a little Baby Yoda right next to him, and this is a fun surprise because it is actually a Bop It.
Bop It to start.
And they literally got Pedro Pascal to do the voice of it.
Bop It to start.
Okay, no Pedro, I can't. Not right now.
Hey, let's give it a rest.
Okay, Pedro. And then down here, these two books are Calvin and Hobbes books. Love Calvin and Hobbes. And then this book is a book about Italy, and it has a bunch of pretty pictures. It's kind of like a coffee table book. That's it, people. Those are my bookshelves. I hope that you enjoyed watching this video and seeing all the different books I have and how I organize them. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed seeing my bookshelves. It was really fun to make, and I hope that you enjoyed it. If there are any books on this shelf that you have loved or hated or have any strong feelings about, let me know in a comment below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, because it really helps out my channel if you do, as well as subscribe if you want to see more videos from me in the future. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.